Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you will find stuff probably unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group with a large membership, and best of all, we're friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
Hello again and welcome back. We continue the story of our journey through the madness of the 1950s and 60s London gangster scene, when me and my brother Ron ran the East End and other parts of the capital with fear. Billy Hill was respected all over London, and one of his favourite haunts was an area called Warren Street, where he used to associate with all the car dealers. One time, in his younger days, Billy visited Johannesburg in South Africa, along with Bobby Ramsey, the ex-fighter. They were in a club one night, and while Billy gambled, Ramsey watched. An argument started between Billy and the minder of the club, an ex-professional wrestler. The minder placed his hands on Billy's shoulders to throw him out, whereupon Billy drew a knife and cut him up so badly he needed 100 stitches. Outside the club, Billy produced a revolver and aimlessly fired pot shots at one of the other guards. Ramsey was arrested for this offence and served 3 months in a South African jail, while Billy evaded capture and escaped back to London. Ron and me, in the company of Ian Barry and Christine Boyce, whom I spent a lot of time with in those days, went to Tangiers and were made very welcome by Billy. We had gone there because we found out that the law was making itself very busy and was out to arrest us for the murder of George Cornell and other crimes. We had left England in a small 6-seater plane from the area of Hastings, stopped off in France, and from there we went on to Tangiers. Billy Hill was a great host and would tell us of his exploits with the criminal fraternity. He told us of a big robbery he was involved in East Castle Street, where after hijacking a post office van, he and others had got away with $250,000 in cash. This robbery made headlines for the week, and the law didn't have a clue who had pulled it off. After lying low for a few days, Billy decided to move the cash to another safe house. He put the sacks in the boot of his car, headed away from his Bayswater flat, and broke down about a mile away. He got out of the car and, seeing a policeman on point duty, asked him to push it while Billy sat behind the wheel. The car eventually started, and after profusely thanking the policeman, he drove to Spitalfields Market to meet Slip Sullivan, who was waiting with a lorry laden with sacks of potatoes. They placed the quarter mill underneath the potatoes on the back of the open lorry, and then took turns to watch the load discreetly to make sure their hard-earned money was not stolen. Billy and Slip were both pulled in for the robbery, but were released after being questioned because they had a watertight alibi for the time of the robbery. Later on in life, Slip Sullivan was stabbed to death by the woman he was sleeping with. It was ironic that he should be killed by a friend after surviving so many battles with villains in the underworld. Billy Hill was not only someone who taught us how to handle our business better, but he also introduced us to many people who would become very useful later on. One day, Billy phoned Ron and me and asked if we'd meet him at Pat Kennedy's pub, The Star, in Belgrave Square in Knightsbridge. He wanted us to meet Charles Da Silva. When we reached the pub, Billy ordered drinks and introduced us to Da Silva. Then he told us that Charlie Mitchell had been taking liberties with Da Silva by blagging money off him. He added that Da Silva would rather pay Ron and me money regularly rather than let Mitchell blag him. So would we mind him? We agreed and shook hands to bind the deal. We chatted for an hour or so and then left the pub, but not before we had agreed to meet Charles the following day at one of London's best hotels, where he had a full suite. He always lived in style and was booked into the hotel as a sheikh. Charles was born in Indonesia and had a tanned complexion, jet black hair, perfect white teeth, and good looks in general. He wore just enough jewellery and was a perfect dresser. He was known in criminal circles as the king of the con men, and when he conned someone, it was always for an enormous sum of money. After we met up with him, he gave us a considerable sum of money that would set the future pattern for a regular income for looking after him. Charles came from a wealthy family and was used to high living. He told us that he could have been wealthy by working in his family's business, but preferred the excitement and buzz of pulling off a big con. He would only ever drive a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley and only dined in the most exclusive hotels. A little while later, Charles was arrested for selling a fleet of yachts to a couple of mugs for somewhere in the region of £1 million. The yachts, as to be expected, were non-existent. He was given bail and sent for trial. While awaiting trial, he continued to enjoy his luxurious lifestyle. But one night, just before it began, he went to an exclusive hotel, booked a suite of rooms, ordered a bottle of brandy, and took an overdose of tablets. He left a suicide note, saying he couldn't face any more prison time, and asked his family to forgive him. To me, Billy Hill was the epitome of what a professional criminal should be. He was not heavily built, but with a knife, he could be lethal. He was a smart dresser, a good host, and the best of spenders. He was born into a criminal family, and his early years were spent carrying out burglaries. Later on, he teamed up with Jack Comer, who was known as Spotty, for ventures into the black market and protection racketeering in the West End. Jack liked to think the Spotty nickname came from the fact that he was always on the spot, but the truth is, it came from the black mole on his face. Convicted of robbing a warehouse, Billy got the only prison term he would ever serve, moving into smuggling from Morocco, where he had bought his wife Gypsy, the biggest nightclub in the area. He ended up as a property developer and retired from crime. I was greatly saddened when he died in 1984. In his last days, he became pretty much a recluse, dying a millionaire at the age of 73. In many ways, I like to think that I have come close to emulating him, though to be honest, I acknowledge that he stands alone and there will never be another like him. I could say he was our mentor and taught us much of what would stand us in good stead in our rising future. Jack Spot, the former Jewish boss of London, was another London figure Ron and I came up against in our career. Born at Aldgate in East London in the early 1930s, and he was christened Jacob Colmore. In his younger days, he was a powerful figure of a man, with looks and features synonymous with Al Capone. He was very clean living and abstained from taking alcohol or cigarettes, but he'd take the occasional cigar. Though he was very affluent, one of Jack's bad points was that he tended to be rather mean and was a liberal spender. Still, his fascinating personality cancelled out his frugality. Initially, Ron and I got to know him well in our early 20s when he gave us pitches at the races. In the early 1930s, when I was around 21, I travelled up to Manchester with Jack, accompanied by George and Jimmy Woods. Spot had arranged a meeting with the owner of a raincoat factory, and from this meeting he came away $4 grand richer. On the train journey back to London, he handed me £25. As a novice to the business, I accepted this paltry sum with some indignation, but held my tongue. Many years later, Jack opened a club in the West End, and for business reasons, I arranged for someone to set fire to it, the result being that it burnt to the ground. Despite this course of action, I still retained a fond memory of Jack's significant role during those early years. In the 1950s, when Spot and Albert Dimes had a knife fight in Frith Street in central Soho, both men received knife wounds, but Spot had severe lacerations down the right side of his face. They were arrested, charged with causing an affray, and sent to trial. 2 famous hearings resulted from this case, but each time the jury found Spot and Dimes innocent and acquitted them, regardless of the fact that both were cut to pieces. The entire episode was consequently known as the fight that never was. It was through Jack Spot's firm that Ron and I first became friends with Jeff Allen over 35 years ago. It is a strange but interesting story of how our paths crossed, led to our friendship, and brought Jeff into our family as a considered uncle. One particular night, Ron and I were sitting in the Vienna rooms drinking coffee, enjoying the social banter, when Moish Blue Boy, a recognized villain in Jack Spot's firm, came over and put a proposition to us. "Do you fancy a ride in the country? I've found a mug farmer that I'm going to take a few quid off in a bent game of cards. He lives near Stansted Airport, so if you want to come for the ride, I'll square you up a few quid when I've taken his money." Blue Boy, incidentally, was one of the best shady card players in the country, so in anticipation of earning a bit of easy money, we accepted his invitation. Accompanying us were Sammy Liederman and Johnny Stracey, both West End characters. John drove us to Bishop Stortford, and eventually we pulled up outside a quaint little cottage. Jeff invited us in, and without any messing about, broke open a fresh pack of cards and suggested to Moish that they play gin rummy. I watched closely as the inscrutable Blue Boy flawlessly dealt the cards. All this was good experience, and I tried to remember every action and reaction of the 2 players for future reference. When Jeff left the room, Blue Boy would wink at us just to let us know that he still had control over the game and would soon take the sucker for a nice few quid. They played continuously until the small hours, then called it a day. Blue Boy, true to his words, had come up trumps and fiddled Jeff Allen out of £1,100, a substantial amount in those days. Jeff seemed to accept defeat graciously, but said to Moish that he would be unable to pay his debt until the bank opened at 10 o'clock. So he suggested the best thing to do was for us to wait for him at the White Hart Inn in the centre of the village, and he'd meet us there at 11 o'clock. We were all jubilant at the thought of our good fortune, and on reaching the hotel, we ordered a celebration breakfast to toast our success. Watching the clock, we anxiously awaited the arrival of Jeff Allen. Time seemed to stand still, especially when 11 o'clock came and went, and the man didn't show. None of us were unduly suspicious of his delay, but as time went on, Moish decided to give him a call to find out what the problem was. He eventually answered the phone. As we watched Blue Boy, it was obvious something was wrong by the expression on his face. He replaced the receiver as though it were a lifeline, and he was suffering a cardiac arrest. Jeff Allen had told Blue Boy, in no uncertain terms, that he had no intention of paying up, and if any attempt was made to go near the cottage, he was waiting with a shotgun and wouldn't hesitate to use it. Blue Boy actually looked quite ill at the prospect of losing all his hard-earned cash, But what could we do except accept the situation and return home empty-handed? I have to say Moish was an excellent paymaster, and had the venture been successful, Ron and I would have been well rewarded. Sad to say, Blue Boy has since passed away, but I'll wager you wherever he is, be it up or down, he'll be scheming to earn himself a few quid. The Jeff Allen affair did have a happy ending as, using Billy Hill's advice, I decided to turn disadvantage to advantage and contact the man again. A few weeks later, I caught a train to Bishop Stortford. I knocked on the door, and when Jeff answered, he looked at me and said, "You've got some nerve coming here, but come in. We might be able to discuss some future business." I did just that, and it proved a very lucrative deal for both of us in the future. He eventually became a big property dealer, and Ron and I were often privileged to be guests in his palatial mansion right up until we were imprisoned. Another man that we were privileged to befriend was John Nash, about the same age as Ron and me. He originated from the Angel in Islington, and we have known him since we were 16. We first met in Shepton Mallet Prison, where all three of us were serving a term of army imprisonment. John was one of the best fighting men in the London area, and had the physique of an athlete and the looks and high cheekbones of the actor Jack Palance. One of 7 brothers, John and his family used to look after the Bagatelle Club in the West End, another favourite haunt among villains. John is also credited with having played a dominant role over the years in the changing scene of underworld politics in the capital. I was in Wandsworth Prison with him when he was serving 2 years for possessing a gun. He told me he had been fitted up on this charge, and I have every reason to believe him, though it was no secret that John's nickname of the Peacemaker came not only from his negotiating skills between rival gangs, but because he invariably carried a Colt Peacemaker, the original Wild West gun. Johnny is a compulsive gambler, and I recall one evening when he was playing in a West End casino, an ex-wrestler tried to take a liberty with him, so John picked up a chair and smashed it over the fella's head, leaving him with little inclination to wrestle anyone again. On the other side of the coin were men like Tommy Venables. Tommy lived in Minotti Street, near Valence Road. He was about 5 foot 8 inches tall with blue eyes, and had one of the worst razor slashes I have ever seen down the right-hand side of his face. He was a villain and a con man, and had never done an honest day's work in his life. Tommy taught us many tricks which came in handy when we became con artists ourselves. Tommy would always be on the lookout for a likely client as a receiver of stolen goods, and work on him what is known as the comer. He would offer to sell him a lorry load of cigarettes, and would arrange a meeting place to drop the load. His driver would deliver the goods, and the receiver would climb into the back of the lorry to inspect the merchandise. He would open one of the top cartons and take out a sample. Then Tommy would give him the hurry up, suggesting the possibility that the law might be in the area. Invariably, the receiver would hastily hand over the cash and speedily unload his consignment of stolen cigarettes in anticipation of the police arriving. Before the last box was off the lorry, Tommy would be in his local, putting himself outside of a couple of large scotches. It would only be when the dealer went to resell the load at a later date that he'd discover to his amazement that he had been duped, and the boxes contained not packs of cigarettes, but sawdust. The fact that Tommy was well known as a villain would usually ensure that the injured party did not go to the police or seek recompense. A favourite con trick that Tommy used, as did many others in the East End, myself included, was to go to the main dealer in snide rings, Red-Faced Tommy. He would give us the rings on credit with an understanding that we would look after him when a mug was found to buy one of the fake rings. Tommy Venables sold so many of these rings all over London that he was lucky to have only one scar down his face, because many receivers had a heavy on the firm to sort out anyone who targeted them as suckers. East End villains needed a lot of bottle to work as they did. Albert the Jar, so named because he sold so many jargoons or fake stones, would laugh his way out of any situation if any receiver caught up with him after being taken for a ride. Once he had their money, the suckers had no chance of retrieving it. But Albert was an amiable fella and could charm his way out of any predicament others would regard as highly dangerous. His eyes would really sparkle after he'd got a result from conning someone out of a few notes. He had the con man's silver tongue. I have often seen him drinking and cracking jokes with someone he had duped, and you could guarantee, before they parted, Albert would have smoothed over any unpleasant atmosphere between them. He would say, "There's my phone number. Find me a customer for one of my jargoons and I'll cut you in for a few quid." The sucker would be so eager to get his money back that he would go along with Albert's scheme and feel quite pleased that he was going to be compensated. They would shake hands and part amicably. But this lifestyle eventually started to take its toll. One day, Albert was feeling under the weather, so he decided to visit our crooked doctor for some advice. Whatever was wrong with Albert, I can assure you that it wasn't his conscience playing him up, because he used to say to me, "Reggie, when you find a mug, squeeze him like a lemon, then leave him screaming." There's one walking over London Bridge every day. Anyway, Albert saw the doctor and said, "For some reason or other, Doc, my nerves are all shot up." To which the doctor replied, "It's no wonder. I'm surprised you've never had a nervous breakdown. You go conning people left, right and centre, never knowing when one of them might take a knife to you. You accept it as the norm to drink with these people, laughing and joking after you've ripped them off, but I'm surprised you've never been found in a river or alleyway dead." Albert told me this story one day while we were drinking in the Double R Club. Always one with a great sense of humour. He seemed genuinely sorry for himself and said to me, "Those who work in factories for a living don't know what peace of mind they've got." Needless to say, Albert the Jar was one of my best customers at the Double R. And that brings us to the end for this episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.